My family tried to steal the house my grandma left me. I caught my dad on camera trying to break in. My grandmother had been dead for exactly 6 days when my father asked me, very casually, over reheated lasagna, if I'd thought about doing the right thing yet. I didn't understand the question. I still had grandma's funeral program folded up in my purse. I hadn't even washed the dress I wore to the service. And my dad was asking me to do the right thing like I'd already done something wrong. I'm 31. My name doesn't matter for this, so let's just say I go by Ray. I have one older brother, Tyler, who's 35, married, 2 kids. Growing up, everyone always said Tyler was the responsible one, and I was the quiet one, which is a nice way of saying nobody paid much attention to me unless I was doing something wrong. I moved out at 19, put myself through community college while working nights at a call center, and eventually landed a decent job doing logistics coordination for a regional trucking company. Nothing glamorous, but steady. I bought a used Honda with 80,000 miles on it, and I was proud of that car. My grandmother, Dorothy, was the one person in my family who never treated me like an afterthought. When I was a kid and my parents were fighting constantly, I used to spend weekends at her house. She taught me how to can tomatoes and how to balance a checkbook and how to tell when a man was lying to you by watching his hands instead of his face. She was sharp until almost the very end. The last 3 years of her life, she had congestive heart failure. My dad and Tyler live about 40 minutes from her old house. I live 2 hours away. And yet I was the one who ended up driving down almost every weekend to check on her, take her to appointments, sit with her when she was scared at night because her chest felt tight. My dad visited maybe once a month. Tyler visited on holidays. I'm not saying this to make myself sound like a saint. I'm saying it because it matters for what happened later. So when Grandma passed in her sleep in March, quietly, the way she always said she wanted to go, I was sad but not shocked. What shocked me came 2 weeks after the funeral, when the lawyer called to schedule a reading of the will. I almost didn't go. I figured whatever Grandma had would obviously go to my dad, since he was her only child, and then eventually get split between me and Tyler down the road. I wasn't expecting anything. I just wanted closure. The lawyer's office smelled like old carpet and coffee that had been sitting too long. My dad sat on one side of the small conference table, Tyler next to him, and I sat by myself on the other side because I got there last and there wasn't room. The lawyer, a tired-looking man named Mr. Halloran, cleared his throat and started reading. Most of it was standard. Some jewelry to a cousin, a modest amount of cash split between grandkids, and then he got to the house. The property at 214 Larkspur Lane, along with its full contents and the adjoining half-acre, is to be transferred in full to my granddaughter, Ray. I actually laughed a little, thinking I misheard him. Nobody else laughed. My dad went very still. Tyler's jaw kind of locked up in a way I recognized from when we were kids, and he was trying not to lose his temper in front of adults. My dad asked Mr. Halloran to repeat that part, like there was a chance the paperwork had a typo in it. There wasn't a typo. Grandma had updated her will 14 months earlier. Handwritten note attached and everything, in her looping cursive, saying only that she wanted the one who actually showed up to have the house, so it would go to someone who'd take care of it the way she always tried to take care of her family. I want to be clear that I did not ask for this. I never once thought about what would happen to that house. I loved that house because it smelled like her, not because it was worth anything. The drive home from the lawyer's office was silent. My dad didn't say a word to me. Tyler didn't either. I told myself it was shock. Grief does strange things to people. I figured after everyone had time to process it, things would go back to normal. They did not go back to normal. For the first week, it was just weird silence. Missed calls I didn't return right away, texts that felt colder than usual. Then my dad started calling more, always steering the conversation toward the house. What was I planning to do with it? Did I know how much upkeep an old house like that needed? Wasn't it a lot for a single girl to manage on her own? I didn't think much of it at first. I figured he was just having a hard time processing that his mother had left something so significant to me and not to him. Then came the lasagna dinner. Doing the right thing turned out to mean signing the house over to him. He explained it very reasonably, like he'd rehearsed it. Grandma wasn't thinking clearly near the end, he said. The house should stay in the direct line, meaning him, since he was her son. He'd let me keep some of the furniture. He even offered me $5,000 for my trouble, which he called more than fair. I remember sitting there with a fork full of lasagna halfway to my mouth, just staring at him. Dad, she wasn't confused. She specifically wrote why she wanted me to have it. She was 84 and on heart medication, Ray. People say things. She said it 14 months before she died. She was fine. He got quiet in that way that used to scare me as a kid, right before he'd raise his voice. This time, he didn't raise it. He just said, very evenly, I think you should really think about what family means here. I didn't sign anything. I told him I needed time to think, mostly just to end the conversation, and I drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel the whole way. I want to say I handled the next part perfectly. I did not. For about a month, I tried to keep the peace. I didn't move into the house right away. I kept paying paying rent on my apartment while also covering the property taxes and utilities on Grandma's place, telling myself I'd figure out logistics later, once things calmed down with my family. I told myself if I just gave everyone space, this would blow over. It did not blow over. It got worse. My mom started calling, which was unusual, because my mom and dad divorced when I was 12, and she generally stays out of his business. She said she wasn't calling to pressure me, she just wanted to check in. But every conversation eventually looped back to how hard this must be for my dad. Losing his mother, and then losing the house too. I pointed out that he wasn't losing anything, since it was never his to begin with. "I know, sweetie, I know," she said, "but you have to understand how it looks from the outside." That phrase stuck with me. How it looks from the outside. Like there was a version of this story circulating that I hadn't heard yet. I found out what that version was 3 weeks later at my cousin Danielle's baby shower. Danielle and I aren't super close, but we're friendly, and she pulled me aside near the gift table with this careful look on her face, the kind people get when they're about to tell you something they know will upset you. "Hey, so I don't want to start drama," she said, "but Aunt Carol mentioned something at Easter, and I just wanted you to hear it from me instead of finding out some other way." Aunt Carol is my dad's sister. Apparently the story going around the extended family was that I had been working on Grandma for years, driving down every weekend, not out of love, but to slowly convince her to change her will, and that Grandma had gotten confused near the end and I'd taken advantage of it. Some people were even saying I'd driven a wedge between Grandma and my dad on purpose so she'd cut him out. I felt sick, genuinely sick, like the floor tilted a little. "Who's saying this?" I asked. Danielle looked uncomfortable. "I think it started with your dad. Maybe Tyler too. I don't know exactly who told who." I didn't cause a scene at the baby shower. I went to my car afterward and cried for 20 minutes before I could drive. Here's the thing that made it worse. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was actively rewriting 3 years of my life. Every weekend I drove down instead of resting. Every appointment I sat through in a cold waiting room. Every night I stayed over because Grandma was scared and didn't want to be alone. All of that got turned into a manipulation campaign in the family group chat, and I hadn't even known it was happening until a pregnant cousin pulled me aside near a table of onesies. I confronted my dad about it over the phone that night. He didn't deny saying it, not exactly. He just said, "I only told people what I honestly think happened, Ray. I think Grandma got confused. You know that's not true. I know what I know." I hung up on him. First time in my life I'd ever done that. For a while after that, I mostly just avoided everyone. I started actually moving into Grandma's house that summer, slowly, bringing a few boxes at a time on weekends. It felt strange living there without her, but it also felt like the safest place I'd been in months, oddly enough. Nobody bothered me there, or so I thought. That's when things took a turn I genuinely did not see coming. I was at the house one Saturday in July, unpacking kitchen boxes, when I heard a key turn in the front door. I froze. Grandma's old dog, a beagle mix named Biscuit that I'd kept, started barking. I walked into the front hallway with a rolling pin in my hand, fully expecting a stranger, and instead found my sister-in-law, Amber, standing there with a cardboard box of her own. She looked just as startled to see me as I was to see her. "I didn't think you'd be here today," she said, which was such a strange thing to say that it took me a second to process it. "I live here now, Amber. Why do you have a key?" She got flustered, said Tyler gave it to her a while back, said she was just grabbing some of Grandma's old china that Grandma had promised her. I told her nothing was promised to her that wasn't in the will, and I asked for the key back. She gave it to me, visibly annoyed, and left without the box. I called Tyler immediately. He was defensive right away, before I'd even finished explaining. "It's not a big deal, Ray. Grandma's spare key was just floating around. Someone had to have it." "Why did Amber have it? Why didn't anyone tell me she was coming over?" "Because it's still kind of a family house, whether you want to admit that or not." That sentence sat with me for days. It's still kind of a family house. Like, the will was more of a suggestion than a legal document. I changed the locks the next week. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was probably an innocent misunderstanding, but something in my gut wouldn't let it go. Turns out my gut was right, because that wasn't even the twist that actually blew everything open. About a month later, my dad invited me to lunch, just the two of us, at a diner we used to go to when I was a kid. I actually let myself hope, walking in, that maybe this was him trying to repair things. Maybe he'd apologize for the rumors. Maybe we could move forward. Instead, he slid a folder across the table before I'd even ordered a drink. "I had a lawyer draw something up," he said. "It's simple. It transfers the house to a family trust. You'd still technically be a beneficiary. It just makes more sense long-term, tax-wise, liability-wise." I opened the folder. It wasn't a trust document. It was a quitclaim deed, with my name already typed in, ready for a signature, transferring full ownership of the house to him, and my mom's ex-husband's name was nowhere on it, just his. Not a trust. Not shared. Him. "Dad, this isn't a trust. This gives you the house outright. It's a formality. You'd still live there." "As what? A renter in a house Grandma left me?" He got frustrated, said I was twisting his intentions, said Tyler had helped him find a lawyer who could get this done quickly and cheaply. That detail caught in my head. Tyler had helped him find a lawyer. My brother, who I'd thought was mostly just going along with Dad's version of events out of loyalty, had actually been involved in drafting paperwork to take my house from me. I didn't sign anything. I left the diner without eating, folder still on the table, and drove straight to my my own lawyer, a woman named Priya I found through a coworker's recommendation, and told her everything. Priya's first question changed how I saw the whole situation. She asked if Tyler had any financial troubles I knew of. I said not that I knew of. Tyler always seemed fine. Decent job as an insurance adjuster, nice enough house, 2 cars. Priya told me it was worth finding out, because in her experience, family suddenly discovering strong feelings about fairness right after a valuable asset changes hands is rarely just about principle. I didn't go digging myself. I didn't have to. My mom, of all people, ended up telling me a month later, during one of her check-in calls, clearly not realizing what she was revealing. I just feel bad for Tyler, too, she said, with everything going on with the house situation, and now the bank thing. What bank thing? Long pause. You didn't know? Oh, Ray, Tyler and Amber are behind on their mortgage. Like, seriously behind. I think they're looking at losing the house if something doesn't change soon. Suddenly, the whole thing made a horrible kind of sense. My dad pushing so hard on principle and family loyalty, Tyler helping find a lawyer for a quitclaim deed, Amber trying to walk out with China and a spare key like she was already inventorying what belonged to who. It was never really about honoring Grandma's memory or keeping the house in the family. It was about my brother needing money, and Grandma's house being the easiest asset in reach if they could just get me to sign it over. I confronted Tyler about it over text, because I genuinely couldn't trust myself to do it over the phone without losing my temper. I asked him directly if the mortgage trouble was why they were pushing so hard on the house. He didn't deny it. He wrote back something like, "So what if it is? It would help all of us. Dad could sell it, split it, everyone wins." Everyone except me, apparently, the person who was actually named in the will. At this point, I stopped answering my dad's calls for a while, not out of spite, but because every conversation just felt like another attempt to wear me down. Priya advised me to document everything, which is when I found out about the doorbell camera Grandma had installed the year before she died. A cheap little thing she'd bought after a package went missing once. I hadn't even thought to check the footage until Priya suggested it. What I found on it made my stomach drop. Footage from 3 weeks earlier showed a locksmith's van pulling into the driveway while I was at work. My dad let the locksmith in with what I can only assume was that old spare key situation before I'd changed the locks the second time, or maybe a copy Amber made before she gave hers back. I honestly don't know. The locksmith worked for about 20 minutes. My dad walked around the side yard at one point, looking up at the gutters like he was doing some kind of casual inspection, clearly killing time. I called the locksmith company directly, gave them the date and time, and asked what service had been performed. The woman on the phone, after some hesitation about privacy, confirmed that the appointment had been for a full rekey of the front and back doors, requested and paid for by my father. They had tried to rekey my own house behind my back. If I hadn't happened to change the locks again the week before for an unrelated reason, following a weird feeling I couldn't fully explain, I genuinely don't know what I would have come home to that day. That was the moment something in me just went cold and clear. I wasn't sad anymore. I was done being confused about whether I was overreacting. I sent the footage to Priya. She said it was more than enough, combined with everything else, to send a formal cease and desist to both my dad and Tyler, making it explicitly clear that any further attempt to access the property, alter locks, or pressure me into transferring ownership would be treated as harassment and potentially trespassing, with law enforcement involved if necessary. I also did something I'm still a little conflicted about, looking back. I posted the doorbell footage along with a calm, factual explanation in the family group chat. Not to humiliate anyone, or at least that's not how I framed it to myself at the time, but because I was tired of being the villain in a story everyone else was writing. The reaction was immediate and messy. Aunt Carol went silent. A couple of cousins reached out privately to apologize for repeating things they'd heard secondhand. My mom called crying, upset that things had gotten so ugly, which stung, because she'd been part of spreading the soft version of the rumor too, even if she never fully admitted that to herself. My dad's response was the one that actually broke something in me for good. He didn't apologize. He said I'd humiliated the family over nothing, and that changing a lock was not the crime I was making it out to be. Tyler didn't respond in the group chat at all. He texted me privately instead, and for a second I thought maybe this was it. Maybe he was finally going to own his part in it. Instead, he wrote, "I hope you're happy. We might actually lose the house now because Dad's too proud to fix things with you." I didn't answer that one. There wasn't anything left to say that hadn't already been said. I want to be honest that this is where the story gets less satisfying and more just true to life, because there wasn't some big dramatic courtroom scene or instant karma moment. Priya's letter did its job. The pressure stopped, mostly. No more surprise visits, no more mystery keys, no more folders slid across diner tables. But it didn't fix anything either. I found Grandma's actual handwritten letter about 6 months after all of this, tucked inside an old recipe box I finally got around to going through that fall. It wasn't part of the official will paperwork, just something personal she must have written around the same time, she updated everything with Mr. Halloran. In it, she explained, in her own words, why she made the choice she did. She wrote that she loved my dad, that she always would, but that somewhere along the way, he'd started treating obligation like it was optional and convenience like it was a virtue, and she didn't want her house to become one more thing he felt entitled to without ever having earned it. She wrote that I never once made her feel like a burden, even on the hard nights, and that was worth more to her than blood alone. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried reading that, not out of anger this time, just grief, the plain kind, the kind that has nothing left to fight. It's been almost a year now. Tyler and Amber did end up selling their own house before the bank could force the issue, moved into a smaller rental across town. We're not in contact, not really, beyond the occasional forced hello at a cousin's event. My dad and I speak maybe once every couple of months, short, careful conversations that never touch the house or the will or any of it. My mom and I are actually closer than we used to be, oddly enough, once she stopped trying to referee something that was never hers to referee. I still live in Grandma's house. Biscuit still sleeps at the foot of the bed in what used to be her room. Some nights it still feels like a house full of good memories. Other nights it feels like the place where I found out exactly what my family thought I was worth. My friends are split on how I handled it. A couple of them think I should have just given my dad the money version, the $5,000, avoided the whole mess, kept the peace for the sake of family. Others think I let it go on way too long before finally protecting myself. I honestly still don't know if posting that footage in the group chat was the right call, even though every fact in it was true. Part of me thinks I should have just handled it quietly through Priya. Part of me thinks quiet was exactly what let it get as far as it did in the first place. Was I wrong to keep the house? Was I wrong to expose what they tried to do instead of just letting it fade out privately? I still don't know how to feel about any of it, honestly. I just know I sleep better with new locks than I ever did, hoping everyone would eventually do the right thing on their own.